on.
Thank you. You can see the jury gets here. Did you ask for something, Ms. Moran? Oh, was you?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, can you just ask, the microphone?
Judge, I would just ask the court to compel defense counsel to give us contact information for the previous witness. We have tried many times to reach her and not been able to. She's not returned any of our phone calls or responded to any of our messages. So if we could get good contact information for that witness, it'd be extremely helpful.
Well, and why would that be helpful?
Judge, we have further. I know. We'd still like to reach her.
Judge, to the best of my information, we got that contact info from Discovery. I don't know that we have any ability to get that information beyond what the prosecution has available to them. I can check on that.
If you check on that, I'd appreciate it. Or have your investigators check on it. They got all of it.
I will look into that. But I mean,
I think they're entitled to it. I don't know what good it's going to do with this whole thing.
we have what they have.
I'm sorry?
We have what they have. We got it from them.
Okay.
But I will inquire with
double check that. That'd be great. Thanks. All rise for the jury. Okay, please be seated. Next defense witness.
That's called Kevin Torres.
Okay. Torres, come up to the witness stand, please. And please raise your right hand before you sit down. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you. Have a seat.
Good afternoon, sir. Permission to inquire, Your Honor.
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Would you please state your name for the record and spell your last name?
Yes. My name is Kevin Torres. Spelling my last name is Torres.
Sir, where do you work?
I'm an agent with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation.
And how long have you been doing that?
Since 2013.
Prior to working with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, who was your employer?
I was employed by the Pueblo Police Department.
And before embarking on your career as a police officer, were you in school? What did you do before that?
Prior to becoming a police officer, I worked at the Federal Bureau of Prisons at the Supermax facility in Florence, Colorado. And then I went to college at Colorado State University.
And got your bachelor's?
That's correct. Bachelor of Science degree in sociology and criminology.
What is the title of your job now with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation?
I'm a field agent.
And is that the job you started with, or have you worked your way through other jobs with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation?
When I initially got hired with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, I was hired to be the supervisor of the crime scene unit, which is what I was doing in 2013 and 2014.
And part of the experience that informed your ability to do that work was that you had been a homicide detective, is that right?
Homicide detective and crime scene investigator for Pueblo PD.
So major crimes unit, assaults, homicides, that kind of stuff.
Correct.
And this part, I think it's awkward for folks, but this is your opportunity to toot your horn. There have been big cases that you have been involved in solving. Pardon me if I say this wrong, but the Iacabone? You helped solve that case?
Yes.
And how'd you do that?
Through DNA.
Did you find blood somewhere?
I did.
There's another matter, the Candelario matter. Do you recall that one?
Yes, Ralph Candelario.
Is that one you helped solve?
It is.
And that was another instance where there had been blunt force trauma. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
And lots of blood?
Yes.
I don't do this to embarrass you, but in 2018, you were awarded the Colorado Bureau of Investigation Employee of the Year. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
That's kind of a cool thing within the Bureau.
It was an honor, yes.
You have experience in crime scene investigation. Sorry if that's a dumb question.
Yes, I do.
Do you have experience in seeking to find DNA, biological matter, blood?
Yes, in collecting the blood so that it can be analyzed for DNA. That's correct.
And how long have you been working on developing an expertise in that role?
I mean, as a patrol officer, I'd say probably basic experience, but when I became a detective in 2004, that's when I really accelerated at the crime scene aspect of my career. So I would say probably since 2004.
And since 2004, do you attend continuing education events? Do you attend seminars and otherwise to help you keep abreast of the state-of-the-art in crime scene investigation?
Yes, I make every attempt to try to attend these professional conferences and seminars and training courses, for the exception of last year. It was the first time in 22 years that I had not been able to attend anything due to COVID.
Have you found blood on hundreds, thousands of occasions? How would you characterize your ability to find blood at crime scenes?
I mean, I found blood a lot. By hundreds would probably be accurate.
I want to direct your attention to February 11th, 2014, it being many years ago.
Judge, if counsel is looking to qualify Agent Torres as an expert in something, I agree he's very well qualified, but the question hasn't been asked yet.
Were you going to do that for crime scene, or what were you talking?
I don't know that it's exactly necessary, but I do agree that he's qualified, so I would seek to qualify him as an expert in crime scene investigation.
He'll be qualified in that field.
Thank you.
So if I could focus your attention to 2014, understanding it's a long time ago, but do you recall getting called out to do processing on a truck in February of 2014?
I do.
And do you remember as you arrived in Durango, well, where were you coming in from?
So I was called on February 11th, and I believe we set the date of February 13th, 2014 to process a white truck that the investigator had obtained a search warrant for, and they were looking for any type of biological evidence, as well as they were bringing a canine to the scene.
That's the one. So as you arrived in town, do you recall being briefed on what developments in the case, what was going on?
Yes, I met with the investigator, Tanya Goldbright.
And the other folks who were involved in this investigation, the crime scene or the truck analyzing?
So to my knowledge, or my memory, it was myself, investigator Goldbright, and then I believe an hour or so later, the canine handler arrived, and then we had a discussion at that time about the procedure in which we would undertake the processing of that vehicle.
And was there some description just roughly about the facts, about what you're looking for and what the hypothesis of the law enforcement officials was?
I don't recall the hypothesis. I do remember having a discussion about a missing juvenile that Investigator Galbraith identified to me as Dylan Redwine, and said that he had been missing since, I believe it was November of 2012. And this vehicle that we would be processing belonged to the father of Dylan, Mr. Mark Redwine.
And as contained in the affidavit for the search warrant, there was some description about how it was suspected that that truck had been used to dispose of the child's body.
I believe there was a discussion about possibly the vehicle being used to transport a body, but I don't remember anything concrete about it being this is the vehicle, but just something that it may have been the vehicle.
Sure. That's what you were called in for, was to make that assessment?
Help search it for evidence, yes.
And those conversations were happening in the presence of that dog handler?
I don't believe the initial conversation did, but I know at some point when she arrived, we did have a conversation about the missing person, Dylan Redwine, and then also how she conducted her business, some of the cases that she had done, and how she searched the vehicles in those cases or searched the properties in those cases. And then I kind of explained to her my method for how I process vehicles and what is in the best interest of the evidence as opposed to just kind of letting the dog do its thing.
Fair to say that some part of this briefing would have been making her aware of why this dog was being looked at?
Objection, Judge. These are leading questions, and as the court can see, Mr. Moran's forcing information upon the agent that he thinks is helpful to his case.
These are leading questions, Mr. Moran. Ask the question of the
What was said about the Dodge truck in the presence of the handler?
Action asked and answered, actually.
Well, we'll see. You can answer the question, Agent Torres.
No, I don't recall exactly. I just, again, the only thing I specifically remember is the process in which I was going to undertake in trying to locate evidence.
When you say that there was a briefing, what do you mean?
That would have been Investigator Galbraith basically giving me the reason as to why she called me, basically that she had obtained a search warrant, that she had legal authority to search this vehicle, and the type of assistance, if any, that she had particular in mind. And in this case, she was looking, I believe, for some forensic type assistance in trying to locate blood, whether it was visible or latent.
Who else was present for the briefing? Do you recall?
Like I said, I believe that first hour or so, it was myself and Investigator Galbraith. And then I remember the canine handler coming in, and I'm roughly guessing about an hour later.
Do you recall that there was also a CBI agent, Jeff Brown, there?
Yes, he was there briefly for that briefing.
And when he was there for the briefing, the dog handler was also present, right?
I don't remember that.
Would it refresh your recollection to take a look at the report from that day?
Sure.
You may.
Okay.
Did that refresh your recollection as to who was present for the briefing?
Yes.
And it was yourself?
Are you going to do an open-ended question here?
I'm sorry. Thank you. I forget. Who was present for the briefing?
It would have been myself, Agent Jeff Brown, Investigator Galbraith, and then Karen Corcoran.
And what was it obvious to you that everybody was attentive during the briefing?
Objection to relevance, and this has all been asked and answered.
I don't understand that question at all, in terms of why you need to get that out.
I would ask
assume that they're being pretty attentive.
I would ask to approach if there's any need for further discussion on this.
All right, come on up.
I beg your pardon if this sounds like a dumb question. You can leave out the dumb question part.
A minute and a half, Mr. Moran.
You can leave out the dumb question part. As far as you could tell, during this briefing, was everybody attentive?
I believe so, yes.
And nobody interrupted the briefing. Is that fair?
Not to my recollection, no.
Nobody interrupted to say, don't tell me what you found so far. Would that stand out to you?
I vaguely remember a conversation at the actual location where we processed the vehicle by the canine handler about blind verification, but I can't say whether or not she was doing that in this case.
And she wasn't doing that during the briefing, that came later, right?
Yeah, I couldn't say if it happened during the briefing, but I do remember vaguely a conversation at the impound place where we processed the vehicle. Okay.
So what happened after the briefing?
We drove to the impound lot and did a visual inspection of the vehicle as far as just look at how it was situated and just kind of formulated a game plan to see how I was going to process that vehicle.
And if you would, what was the game plan? Specifically, dog first, you first, what was?
So the way I process vehicles, obviously for the purposes of DNA processing especially, I want to photograph the vehicle as it is, as I see it. That way there's a good, crisp documentation of how that vehicle looks, the items that may be inside of it, before anything is searched or disturbed or any type of canine is allowed to conduct a sniff of it.
And was those, what you're describing, the photos, that sort of comes first, and are those the photos that I showed you in the hallway?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Tendering your witness. Defendant 1093, and it should be sequential, though I have removed one image.
No 5.
Sounds better than I do.
So it's, but you didn't tell me how far you're going. So
1093 and
what's your last one?
1109, excluding 1105.
All right.
Judge, I believe these are all search warrant photos from discovery, and if that's the case, I have no objection to any of them being admitted.
All right. They will all be admitted 1093 through 1109 with the exception of 1105.
So after the photographs are taken, that's when the dog does its sniffs. Did I understand that properly?
Yes. So I would have taken the photographs, and then if there was something in there that I would have seen such as if I'd have seen an obvious stain of blood, such as, just to give an example, I guess if there was a bullet hole in the vehicle and then there was blood around the bullet hole, I would pay more attention to that before allowing the canine to get in there. But in this case, I don't recall seeing anything that prevented the canine from doing their search at that time.
The idea that letting the canine in might disturb the evidence, and you don't want to do that.
That obvious evidence, yes.
In looking at the Dodge, had it recently been cleaned? Had the interior been cleaned recently that you could tell?
No, it had not.
And while you were doing work on this truck, did you take contemporaneous notes?
I did.
And did you observe anybody else taking contemporaneous notes?
I honestly couldn't tell you if they did or not. I was pretty focused on my process and looking for evidence.
Fair to say that the dog sniff part of the search, well, if you were observing it, was it filmed? Was there a video camera used to film that?
No, I don't recall a video camera being used, or I didn't use a video camera. I can't really say if anybody else did or not.
And I'm basing this on your notes. I can refresh your recollection if you need me to. Do you remember where the dog cued in the interior of the truck?
Objection, Judge. This was expert testimony, and we litigated it in advance, and the jury's already heard about it. He's not qualified to talk about it.
That makes sense. I can avoid the word cued.
Well, cued's wrong anyway.
Judge, the process from the dog, has already been explained in testimony to the jury. So asking this witness specifics of that expert's work is outside the purview of his expertise, and these aren't appropriate questions given the pretrial rulings of the court.
Your Honor, he's expert in these issues. He was following up after the dog did its sniff to see if there could be corroboration of the items that the dog alerted to. That's
well, it's already been testified to as to where the dog alerted, correct?
But it's different according to the contemporaneous notes taken by this individual.
Well, how does he even know when a dog is alerting or not?
Because
how does he know what this dog does?
You're right. I can ask that question.
Okay.
Sir, you were mentioning that there was some description provided by the handler as to how that dog works.
Judge, that's hearsay.
No, it's not.
It's leading up to a hearsay question.
No, dogs don't make statements.
I understand. May I explain?
Yes.
So the handler testified as to the findings of the dog by a trained final responder. If Mr. Moran's going to ask this witness if the handler told him what that looks like, and then ask this witness to opine on what that dog did based on what the handler told him, that's going to be hearsay and outside his expertise. So I think Mr. Moran can pick up what the process and it's up, and the jury already has the other information from a qualified expert.
Yeah. Mr. Moran, any response?
I can ask it a different way.
No, I don't think so. And here's the reason. When Mr. Johnson made me thinking about this a little more, I was going your way. I mean, they're qualified as a team. They work as a team. It's the dog handler who knows when somebody is hitting on something. So if you're just talking about observations, I don't think you can do it.
Your Honor, may we approach? I'd like to make an offer of proof about what this evidence is.
I think that's a good idea. Go ahead, Mr. Ryan.
Were you informed as to where the dog had given a final trained response such that you could go in and were using your forensic tools to corroborate that?
Yes.
And again, I can help you with your report if you do not recall, but do you remember in the interior where that final trained response was or where you were told to work more?
Yes.
Where was that, sir?
In the backseat.
And where else?
In the bed of the truck.
One of the reasons that you were enlisted on this particular day was because the dog was going to be in town, and they wanted you to see if they could get corroboration of the dog's work through your expertise. Is that right?
I know the dog was flying in. As far as the second statement about the dog searching and then me corroborating the dog, I don't know that. I think there was a team effort, but a separate kind of approach in the fact that I'm not relying on the dog's not relying on me. We're working for the evidence, essentially looking for evidence. As I explained earlier, looking for blood that was not only visible, but blood that was also latent or any other type of trace evidence.
So the places where the dog alerted would have been places that you searched, right?
Correct.
And because you're taking contemporaneous notes, and because you're obligated to create a crime scene report, you would have written down the places.
No, that's exactly what we talked about, and that's what the objection was. You've got as far as you can get with that. He can't interpret where there was a trained final response. If that's what you're trying to do, I'm not going to let you do it.
As an offer of proof.
As an offer of proof, you made one here at the bench, and I'm not going to say what it was, and you're stuck with what he just testified.
There were
You're not going to say that in front of the jury.
Thank you, Judge.
There was not an offer of proof as to this question.
This is entirely inappropriate.
As to this question.
All right, come up here. You can make your offer of proof.
So, thank you, pardon me. So what I was asking is, with respect to your contemporaneous notes, you were noting the places you'd been told the dog alerted so you could follow up and see with your forensic tools if those alerts could be corroborated. Is that right?
No, I don't recall saying that.
Is that true, that you would have noted in your crime scene report the places that you were asked to follow up because there had been a dog alert?
Mr. Johnson.
Objection. These are all leading questions, and these mischaracterizing testimony as well.
You know, he can't ask a leading question because this is a witness that's associated with the prosecution being part of CBI. Isn't that correct?
It's a witness who's going to say he found no blood in the truck and called by the defense. So where he works, I don't think is relevant. He's certainly testifying to exculpatory information that leads on his face.
You know, I'm setting a foundational question here for impeachment, and we have not requested.
I'm going to let him lead a little bit, but I tend to agree. Unless you can show he's leading questions. You can ask this leading question, and I'll decide on the others that are sure to come. So go ahead.
So I'm going to show you your report, and I'm going to ask you to identify in your report where you said that Karen Corcoran told you her dog alerted in the bed of the truck. May I approach?
You may.
I'm going to show the witness pages 26 through 28 of his report. It's 1797 to 1798. Discovery. The discussion on this issue is line 7 of page 1798. Sir, if you take your time reading that and let me know when you've had sufficient time to review it, and then we'll talk about what's in there when you're done reviewing it, please.
I'm sorry, did you cite a line? I missed the cite. Did you say line?
Yes, but I would ask that you peruse the entire document to see if there's any mention in there of you following up with a dog alert in the bed of the truck. And the line, I think, is 7 or 8. It's on the second page. May I approach? I'll point it out. I'm not certain the line number.
Yeah, I see it. Okay.
May I approach?
Yes.
There's no mention of an alert in the bed of the truck, correct?
That's correct.
You directed some attention to the back seat, the interior of the pickup truck, right?
Yes, I did.
And is it fair to say that you used a chemical agent called Luminol?
Correct.
Luminol oxidizes with iron, is that right?
Yes.
Will you explain further for the jury what Luminol is and what it does?
Sure. Luminol is a chemiluminescent agent that we use to detect what we consider latent blood or hidden blood. Basically, it's blood that you wouldn't see with the human eye or blood that's been cleaned up, for example. If there was a bloodletting event on this table here and I wiped it up really clean, got it nice and clean, although I've cleaned the visible red stuff off of there, there's still traces of iron on the surface that will react with the agents in the luminol. It produces a very bright and intense reaction in the dark or in very dim light, and can give us an idea of where there might be blood that was either degraded, cleaned up, or not visible to the eye.
So would a little bit of blood, if cleaned up, make a big smear?
Potentially.
Did you observe anything like that in the back of that pickup truck?
No.
And even after spraying luminol, there was nothing indicating the presence of oxidizing iron associated with blood?
I did see a reaction, but I also followed that up with another presumptive blood test, and it confirmed that it was negative.
You want a permission to publish 1093?
Yes.
May I approach?
Yes.
So was this photograph that you took of the truck associated with Mr. Redwine?
Yes, the interior of the truck on the dashboard.
Is this something that you found in the truck?
Yes.
So there were several of them, looks like cards that passed out with information about Dylan Redwine.
Correct.
Permission to publish the next video?
Yes. You can just publish.
There's this photograph you took?
Yes.
And does it confirm what we were talking about with the truck in the detail?
Yes, this is one view where you can see mud and dirt on the floorboard and just some other items scattered on the front driver's seat.
So to your eyes, it makes a little more sense. It looks dark. I think the rest of
Yeah, so this is a photograph that I took. We take a series of photographs, and this is just one in a series that we take. So I have some context to it, but this is a photograph of a reaction that I observed in the back seat of the truck. And you can see it in the very middle of the screen there. There's one, two, looks like there's 4 dots. They're kind of like a lightish blue color. You can barely see them in the middle of the screen. And it's just a very faint glow. Sure. Yeah. Is it a laser pointer or?
No, it's just
okay. May I approach the screen?
Yeah, go ahead, and I want you speaking into the microphone if you're talking.
Okay. So the dots that I'm pointing to are right here in the middle of the screen. You barely see them. It's a very faint glow.
And to your trained eye, that's something to follow up with. Is that right?
Yes.
And when you follow up, you use a process called phenolphthalein.
Correct.
Phenolphthalein helps you determine whether or not what glowed in this picture is in fact glowed.
That's correct.
And what happened when you double check with them with phenolphthalein?
It was negative.
I think we're mentioning this a moment ago, that you were not limiting what you did to where the dog sold, right?
That's correct.
So you were searching the entirety of the vehicle where the dog was there.
That's correct, yes.
And did you spray phenolphthalein in any other area that you would classify as
Yes.
And was there anything else that glowed, or did you take a picture of the entire vehicle?
I believe there was, on the other side of this item that has got the spots on there, there was another spot that glowed on the back side of that. And it ended up, what the item was a pouch with a tire iron and a jack stand in it. And it obviously had some rust on it. And that was my belief that it was a positive reaction to the iron and the rust on the bag as opposed to an actual bloodletting event.
So the luminol is great at finding iron that's associated with blood and also tire iron.
Potentially, yes.
If I could have counsel, this bag with tire iron.
That's correct. So this would be a photograph of the same exact thing from the previous photograph, but just with the light on it to show kind of in context where it's at in the back seat.
Fair to say that the analysis and the search of this vehicle was one that was careful and looking closely.
Yes.
May I have you look at 10972? So looking closely through these items and checking through, they glow indicating the presence of blood. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Next one, please.
It's probably better for the record if you could say some exhibit numbers, please. Sure.
This is 1098, sir. And what I think this is zooming in to focus on is that hair. Is that why it's in the center of the frame?
Yeah, I believe it's the kind of beginning of the hair. There were some lighting issues. I took a series of photographs of this, but yes, eventually where the dark area is where it'll start to light up a hair. And
through your work or through any follow-up with this case, did you become aware that that hair was determined to have been of evidentiary value?
I don't believe it was.
May I have counsel scroll to 1099, please? Back up a little bit. I'm sorry if this is gross, but it looks like there's a human remains under that picture.
The photograph is actually depicting a couple different things. One is the debris in the vehicle kind of showing that to me, that there was no evidence of a cleanup. I mean, I would expect the vehicle, had it been cleaned up, to probably you wouldn't see the debris around that, but in the middle of the screen there, it looks like there's some kind of nail clipping.
I could have counsel move through to the next picture, please. And was that nail clipping in fact collected?
Yes.
And does it have any evidentiary value?
That I don't know.
This image, sir, what does this show?
This is just kind of an overall photograph of the bed of the truck.
And were you able to have any positive luminol reactions indicating the presence of blood in the back of the truck?
I didn't see any luminol reactions in the bed of the truck, but I did test several areas in the bed of the truck using phenolphthalein for blood.
So just to double check, went in with the phenolphthalein test, right?
Actually, those visible stains that I saw, I tested first with phenolphthalein, then sprayed the luminol.
Okay. And the test for phenolphthalein was negative, indicating that there was no blood present in the back of the truck.
That's correct, yes.
The next one, please. 1101. Was there something in this image that caught your attention that you double-checked with?
Yes, so there's two stains in this area that caught my attention that I tested with phenolphthalein.
And they were negative, right?
Both were negative, correct.
If we could move to 1102. Nothing of evidentiary value was collected from amongst these items, is that correct?
Not in this photograph, no. This is just the bed of the truck.
And had there been a necessity for it with your training and experience, would you have swabbed any of these items?
Yes, so we removed each item from the bed of the truck. We spread it out, and I visually inspected it and didn't see any stains that appeared to be possible blood.
Did you take swabs of any of the areas so they can take them back to the lab for a check for DNA?
I believe I took trace swabs of the bed of the truck.
And those swabs never came back positive for DNA, right?
I'm negative for blood, I know that, but I can't speak to the results.
If I could have counsel move through to 1103. I think you were mentioning that there was something missing in that photograph.
Yes.
And why was this room taken from inside the truck?
So this broom was observed in the bed of the truck, and when we removed the item and visually inspected it, we saw some hair on the very end of it and began to photograph it and collect that hair. Actually, I believe we collected the entire broom.
And based on your search, was that hair the only, attached to the broom, the only human remain that you were able to identify in the back of the truck?
I can't say human remain because I don't know if it's human or animal hair.
Okay. And if I could have counsel move on now to 1104. And on the end of this is just a close-up. Would you agree?
Yes, that's a close-up of the hair on the end of the broom.
And it depicts the hairs. CBI has the ability to test hairs for mitochondrial DNA, is that right?
Not to my knowledge presently, but they can do a visual examination, determine whether it's human or animal, and if there's a root attached. And if there's a root attached, they can do nuclear DNA. But to my knowledge, we're still sending mitochondrial DNA to source it to a private lab.
Was there?
We're still sourcing it out to a private lab. No problem.
And it was mitochondrial DNA with private lab.
Nothing like that was ever gained from this, is that right?
Honestly, I don't know.
I need to check it. Yeah, go ahead. This is on Mr. Bogan, it's 1105. Thank you, Mr. Bogan. Another photograph that you took.
Yes.
And again, showing the condition of the truck.
Correct.
Nothing taken from these formats that were later determined to be evidentiary value.
Not to my knowledge. I mean, I collected items, but I couldn't speak to their laboratory analysis.
In your esteemed career as a CBI analyst, spanning now 2 decades, have you found blood transfer on the seat of cars?
Yes.
Did you find any on the seat of these cars?
No.
If I could have counsel Roll to 1107. Same holds true of this format, is that right?
Correct.
There was no blood transfer found to it,
Correct.
no touch DNA.
Correct.
So that comes from 1108. Nothing of evidentiary value in this photograph, is that right?
Correct.
Moving on to 1109, please. This is best suggested by the witness, I think.
Do we have those pictures? They're already there? Okay, great.
We discussed the Luminol application in the back seat, but I also believe that you took trace swabs from the rear seat. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Trace swabs are named that way for a reason?
Yeah, because you don't, I mean, it's kind of a blind swab. You don't know what you're picking up. If you're picking up biological matter or some kind of chemical matter, you just don't know.
But over your years of experience, you've got a general idea where to apply trace swabs?
Of where to collect them from?
Sure, like where evidence is most likely to lie in a vehicle, given your experience.
It's more of a methodology, or a methodology, I'd say, but yes.
And fair to say that nothing of evidentiary value was gained from those trace swabs of that truck?
Again, I can't speak to the analysis part of it, but I did collect them.
You used at least phenolphthalein to detect the presence of blood on the trace swabs?
That's correct.
And all of it negative, right?
Yes.
And even though you had a hypothesis as to why the tire jack had illuminated positive for luminol and then negative with phenolphthalein, the investigator there, did she decide to send it off for further lab work anyway?
Yes, we collected it just as a precaution, and I believe she had it tested.
Never any DNA found there?
Again, I don't know specifically on that.
And were you aware when you did this evaluation or inspection in 2014 that previously that truck had once been examined by CBI?
I don't remember it being, if it was examined by CBI. I know it had been, I think she just mentioned that it had previously been searched or examined, or visually searched, I believe.
In November of 2012 or November 29, 2012, search warrant?
I believe so, yes.
And someone with a similar amount of expertise or similar sort of expertise, maybe not as great as you are, but somebody with your expertise, would they have also been called in to search on that day based on what you know of CBI?
In 2012 or?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I believe so.
So that's all I have on direct examination. I think the prosecutor will have questions for you.
Cross?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Agent Torres.
Good afternoon.
So if Teresa Chiromcha and Tanya Goldbright had already testified in the people's case that there's no blood in this truck, you agree?
Correct.
And in terms of luminol, it was very easy for you to rule out whether it was blood or not simply by applying phenolphthalein.
Correct.
Because in this particular search, they were negative.
Yes.
So hypothetically speaking, if a human remains detection canine had indicated accurately in the truck, it's fair to say that the odor was coming from something other than small amounts of blood.
Correct.
Now, counsel asked you about a fingernail and a hair.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. He doesn't have the foundation for that last question. There's also hair and a fingernail there. But this wasn't allowed on my direct. It shouldn't be allowed on cross-examination. He doesn't have that expertise.
You know, you got to object before things come out. It's a little difficult for me to stop things from happening.
It's a hypothetical, Judge, and he's saying that it wouldn't be blood because of his analysis.
I don't think.
Your Honor, he can't.
Would you let me talk? Thank you. I don't think that was the exact objection, was it, Mr. Moran? About the blood? It was about the hair and the fingernail? Or not?
Right.
No, there was no question that he asked you about a fingernail and a hair. That was the question. So you're overruled.
This witness has not been qualified to opine on what those dogs alert to.
Has he been asked that yet? He hasn't been asked that yet. It may be coming.
Mr. Moran asked it. I haven't asked it.
And it was objected to, and I moved on.
Let's move on.
So let's talk about the fingernail and the hair. You're asked about those. You recall that, Agent Torres?
I do.
And you're showing pictures of them, right?
Yes.
But defense counsel didn't ask you where in the truck those items were located, did he?
No.
And he didn't show you the pictures of where in the truck the fingernail and the hair were located, did he?
No, I think we had a zoomed-in photograph.
Okay.
Your Honor, those are the photographs I was provided, so objection.
Well,
This is facts not in evidence, but because
there's no facts and evidence. He's just asking what you did, and this is fine. I don't see a problem with this.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Just I've excluded photos. I've not. I've showed what they provided us.
So, Agent, may I?
You can inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Agent, you indicated that there's a series of photographs that you take, correct?
Correct.
And that series of photographs shows every area in the truck first.
Correct.
And then if you're going to take photographs of a fingernail or a hair, your photographs go from out to in so you can tell where in the truck those items actually are recovered.
Correct. We do an overall medium range and then a close-up view and then sometimes even more of a close-up view.
So far the jury's seen only the close-up view of a hair and a fingernail that have been referred to by defense counsel as human remains. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Where in the truck were the fingernail and the hair that counsel showed you in the close-up photos actually recovered?
So the one photograph where the shadow is, where I was saying that it's shadowed out, you can't see the hair in that photograph particularly well. That photograph was taken from the front driver's side floorboard underneath the floor mat, and there was a hair found right there, and then the nail clipping was found on the driver's side floorboard, and it would be along the left-hand side of the truck. So as you're getting out, it would be kind of down where you would flip your gas tank open or adjust your seat down in that area.
They're both found in the front seat, not the back seat, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. You're asked about the broom, too. Do you recall where the broom that had a couple of hairs on it was found in the truck?
Yes, I do.
Was that in the bed of the truck?
It was in the bed of the truck.
Okay. And would it refresh or do you recall exactly where in the bed of the truck, or would it refresh your recollection to actually see a photograph of where that broom was in the bed of the truck?
Yeah, I mean, I have it in my mind, but yes, I would like to see the actual photograph with it in there. Just
May I approach you, Honor? This is not a defense exhibit, but it's one of the photographs from the search.
Sure. Is it a marked exhibit?
It's 1385 in the disc of photographs we provided to defense for his reference. I'm just going to use it to refresh his recollection.
All right, that's fine.
okay.
So, Agent Torres, those couple of hairs on the end of that broomstick, is it fair to say those are located more towards the middle or maybe just a touch to the right in the bed of the pickup truck?
Yes.
And they're close towards the tailgate, correct?
Yeah, close to the tailgate, kind of on the passenger side.
Is that broom that counsel had in the exhibit, is that end with the hairs anywhere near the driver's side wheel well that's up against the back of the truck?
No.
Now, you talked about some cards in the car that were located.
Right.
Were those cards saying any information related to the homicide of this child, please call, or were those missing child cards?
I'd have to look at them specifically just to make sure, but...
Do you have the exhibits in front of you?
I do.
Okay. May I approach you?
Yeah, I'd want you to help him out with it.
On that exhibit, sir, is there any reference to notifying police about evidence of a homicide, things like that?
Yes, it has contact information for the La Plata County Sheriff's Office and refers to Dylan Redwine as missing.
Okay. So those are missing child cards as opposed to tell us evidence of a crime cards?
Correct.
And these were located in February 13th of 2014?
Correct.
You're aware from the investigation that Dylan was first found way back in June of 2013, right?
Yes, I believe parts of the remains were found, yes.
All right. And you testified to your recollection that there were somewhat minimal facts given going into the search. Is that accurate?
For me, there was, yes.
And the K-9 handler you said was even an hour late?
Yeah, roughly. I can't say exactly, but it was somewhere a little bit later than when I got there.
And you recall that K-9 handler specifically discussing blind verification in terms of what information was received in the case, correct?
Yeah, there was a discussion at the actual location where we processed it about not telling her if I find something or just to see if her dog can locate it.
So fair to say that what you recall is her being careful about what information she received in the case?
Yes.
And your report itself, is that about her statements or that's about the work that you did in the case?
It's about the work that I did.
Is perhaps her report a better way to see expert opinions on trained final responses?
Objection as to his foundation, I guess, to answer that question.
Well, it's an argumentative question anyway, Mr. Johnson. So I'm going to sustain the objection on that basis.
Okay. But based on your memory, sir, you remember that the dog indicated in the truck bed?
I do.
And that's an area that you searched?
Yes.
Now, in terms of the searches that you did, you testified that you do an independent search from the dog, and you search everywhere regardless of what the dog does, correct?
Correct.
And you do that because you might find something that the dog didn't.
Sure.
And you do that because the dog might smell something that you don't see.
Correct.
No further questions. Thank you.
Redirect.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Any questions from the jury? Can this witness be excused?
Yeah.
You okay with that, Mr. Johnson?
Yes, Your Honor.
You're free to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Do we have somebody we can start or not? Okay. All right. Come on up to the witness stand, Ms. Smith. Yes, right up here. And before you sit down, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Have a seat.
May it please the court?
Go ahead.
Can you please state and spell your name for the record, please?
Traci Smith, Traci, last name Smith, Smith.
And in November of 2015, were you employed with the La Plata County Sheriff's Department?
Yes.
And what was your capacity? What were you employed? What were you doing?
I was an administrative assistant, too, for the investigations division.
And did your responsibilities under that position include sometimes working as an evidence tech in the evidence room and lockers?
Yes, I was back up in her absence.
And can you explain what that means and what your responsibilities were working with the evidence lockers in the evidence room at the La Plata County Sheriff's Department?
Yes. If there was ongoing cases, I would sometimes check in evidence, sign it in, make sure that it was properly labeled, and then have the investigators sign off on it as well, or the deputies, whoever was involved, and then sort in evidence. Or if it was to be released, then I would, a lot of times because I was the assistant, I would verify with investigators first because it was not my main job duty, but then I would sign it out and release it to parties if necessary.
And can you explain to the jury the import of that process of having people sign it in and having people sign out evidence at the evidence room?
Yes, there was a sheet. We had a log. It was basically, it had a date and the name of the party. If I'm the one signing it out, I would put my signature and then put that I was releasing it to a party. And the person accepting it, whether it was an outside party or an investigator or a deputy, then they would sign on the following line with the date, their name, and that they had accepted it, and their signature as well.
And is that document called an evidence log?
Correct.
And it sounds like you're familiar with the process and procedure of how that gets filled out and maintained and whatnot.
Correct.
And were evidence logs kept and maintained as part of the regular course of business at the La Plata County Sheriff's Department evidence room?
Yes.
Permission to approach with what has been previously marked as 1924. That's going to be a new number for everyone.
Yes.
And without discussing the contents, because it hasn't been admitted yet, the defendant's 1924, is that an accurate reproduction of an evidence log in this case?
It appears to be, yes.
I'll move for the admission of 1924 under 8036, Judge.
Sure.
You're not the keeper of these records, right?
No, I was not.
Back then in 2012 or 13 or even 2015?
No, I was never in charge of evidence. I was merely a backup.
You were a backup.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't produce these particular records today for trial.
No, I did not.
You know, I don't think he's met the foundational requirements for this type of admission. This is not the custodian of records.
I can ask one more question and make argument.
Go ahead.
Do you see your signature on this where you sign something out as part of the process that you described to the jury?
Yes, I do.
So this is actually a document that you contributed to and signed? And
I see that my signature is on here as somebody who would have released an item. Yes.
Judge, I would again move for admission under 8036, Schmutz v. Bowles, B-O-L-L-E-S, which relies on U.S. v. Keplinger, K-E-P-L-I-N-G-E-R.
Can you give me a site?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Look up that one.
Bowles is 800 Pacific 2nd, 1307. Keplinger is 776 F2D 678. Or in the language relied on in Keplinger and referred to in Bowles says that in sum, a qualified witness to the business record deception would only be someone with knowledge of the procedures governing the creation and maintenance of the type of records sought to be admitted. in recognition of ordinary business records tend to be unusually reliable. The exception is designed to avoid the burdensome process of producing as witnesses or accounting for the non-production of all participants in the process of gathering and transmitting and reporting the information.
So I don't mean to interrupt counsel. While I still don't believe that the proper foundation has been laid, we don't have any reason to doubt the reliability of this actual document, so this is fine, Judge.
All right, it is admitted.
And I'm about 45 seconds behind. I'm going to ask to publish briefly.
Go ahead. You can turn yourself off.
Zooming in on item 530, what is that item, Ms. Smith?
530,
Yes, ma'am.
it says one human skull GPS, and it has the GPS coordinates. And then it has the evidence number, the property number, and the shelf on which it was contained.
And then if we scroll down to the bottom of that same page, are you able to look at this document and see when it was checked into evidence and by whom?
It appears, yes. I don't recognize the signature of whom, actually, for person accepting. I can't read that, but I do see accepted number 530.
And do you get the date on that, the very first entry there?
It says 11/9/2015.
And do you see any documentation of this piece of evidence being checked into or checked out of evidence prior to 11/9/2015?
No.
And the one section that you signed, I think it's, what's the date on that? I'm blowing it up.
It's 12/1/2015.
And does it say who you signed it out to and when it was returned?
It says I released it to Lieutenant Goldbright. And then beneath that it says that it's her signature and number 530 was accepted back.
No further questions for this witness, Judge.
Any questions?
No questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Any questions from the jury? Can she be released?
No objection.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Do you have anybody else we can put on or not?
I think we can call Mr. Richard Swayze.
Okay. The witness stand up here, please, sir. Look over here. And raise your right hand before you sit down. I need to swear you in. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Have a seat. You're a little soft-spoken. Speak up and into the microphone. Okay. People just have to hear you. Go ahead, Mr. Bogan.
Can you please state and spell your name for the record, please?
Richard Allen Swayze.
Swayze, RITHARDALLANSWAYZE.
And in the fall of 2012, were you employed at United Pipeline?
I was.
And in what capacity?
At that time, I believe I was the equipment manager.
And briefly, what were your responsibilities at United Pipeline as the equipment manager?
I did a lot of things. I took care of the equipment, of course, but I also was sent to the field when they were having problems with jobs. So I was kind of a troubleshooter for them as well.
And at that same time period, fall of 2012, was Mr. Mark Redwine employed at United Pipeline as well?
I'm going to say yes. The dates are a little fuzzy for me, but I'm going to assume that it was.
And if you have difficulty remembering anything, just let me or the judge know. And
it's been a while, so the dates are a little confusing.
Okay. Do you recall what Mr. Mark Redwine's responsibilities were at United Pipeline? And
yeah, so Mark's responsibilities kind of changed on a day-to-day basis. He was a truck driver, and then when we'd get shorthanded, they'd make him a superintendent in the field to run a job. And at one point, I think he was made, instead of being a temporary supervisor, I think he was made a permanent supervisor, but then I think they moved him back to a temp supervisor.
And as the equipment manager, would you have interactions with Mr. Mark Redwine and other supervisors and employees there at United Pipeline?
So, yes. Anybody that drove or operated a piece of equipment, I had interaction with. Some more than others. So in Mark's case, I would have had more interaction with him when he was a superintendent than I would some of the just employees that were working under the superintendent.
And at this point, I'm going to start to ask some specific date questions. And
okay.
Do you recall having any interaction with Mr. Mark Redwine on November 18th, 2012?
So, let's see here. So if the 18th is the day that all this is in question that morning, then yes.
It's the day before.
Okay, the
day you're talking about.
Okay, all right. Then yes, I did. If that would have been the morning somewhere between 7:45 and 8.
We're close. We're one date off. I'm going to ask the lead a little bit to expert. Do you recall on November 18th, Mark Redwine returning a work truck?
He did return the work truck, but it was after hours, I believe.
Okay.
And so I was not there when the truck was returned. Okay. I know the truck made it in. I checked it on the Vericom that night. So I know the truck made it in. And, of course, it was there that morning when I got to work at 6:45.
Okay. So based upon where you work, sounds like you know that Mr. Mark Redwine returned one of the United Pipeline trucks to United Pipe the evening after the close of business on November 18th.
The dates, I'm really not.
I got you.
I can't swear to the dates here. So, but yes, he did return the truck. I don't remember what time.
The morning after that date, the date that he returned the truck,
yes, sir.
Do you recall seeing Mark Redwine, Mr. Mark Redwine, at United Pipe?
Yes, I do.
Can you describe that interaction, please?
It had to have been somewhere between 7:45 and 8:15, I'll say. He came into the office, returned paperwork. When the superintendent comes back from the job, they got to give us a bunch of paperwork, and then they had to inform me of any damage to any vehicles, anything that needed to be fixed so that it could go out on the next job. Mark showed up that morning to do that, and we had an hour. I believe it was right at an hour-long conversation. It was a fairly long conversation because I was trying to get back to work, and we were still talking.
And do you recall him being there at United Pipe from about 8 in the morning or thereabouts to about 9 or so?
I would say he had been there every bit of that time because like I said, we had a lengthy conversation. And then he still had to go upstairs and deal with the job superintendent that work in the office that oversees the job.
And do you know if he was there to talk to payroll or anyone like that?
I have no idea on that. We were extremely busy at that point in time, and we're understaffed, and it was all I could do to keep up with the job, let alone worry about where somebody was going.
Do you recall anything out of the normal regarding his demeanor or how he presented that morning, November 19th?
I do, but I don't remember all the details about it. So what I found, at the time I didn't think nothing of it. It was a day later or 2 days later when everything started taking place that it seemed, I didn't know if it meant anything or didn't mean anything, but I said something about it. So in the position I was in, I was not very well liked. I was pretty tough on everybody in the company.
Why is that?
If you tore something up, I was constantly guiding the guys to tearing stuff up, all the rest of it. Upper management loved me because I was the ass of the place. So, but anyway, what was funny is me and Mark really never had a personal conversation, let's say, in this one. And the conversation was, it was about his son. It may have been both sons.
And I'm going to ask you to, I got you. I'm going to ask you not to talk about what were the words he said, but the way he presented, his mood, his demeanor.
He was happier than I've ever seen.
Anything out of the normal regarding his demeanor?
Yes, he looked more sober, clearer, and happier than I normally would see him on a day after getting back into town and showing up that early in the morning.
And based upon your experience, how do guys who've been out in the field present sometimes when they've been out in the field for a while?
Most, I won't say all of them because I can't do that, but 90% of them are heavy drinkers. And a lot of it's from being away and living in a motel room, nothing else to do, I guess. And I would classify Mark as one of those. But that morning, he didn't have the bloodshot eyes that he normally does. He looked like a normal person for a change and happier, and happy, I should say.
Nothing further for this witness on direct.
Okay, how long are you going to be, Mr. Champagne?
I could probably get this done in about 10 minutes, Judge.
All right.
You're there with me. I think you can take care of it. Yep. You said you weren't certain on the dates, right?
That is true, sir.
Okay. Did you have some information that he was coming back from New Mexico to meet up with his son?
No, I didn't know anything about that.
Okay.
The only thing I knew about was that the truck, we had told him that the truck had to be returned to Durango on his return trip and not take it to his house like he normally did.
Okay.
And so that's the only reason I checked to see if the truck made it in that time.
So it could have been the 17th, right? The night of the 17th that he returned that truck?
It could have, without the intelligence reports at this point, I couldn't tell you.
Okay. You're not sure?
I'm not sure. No, sir.
And he came in pretty early, 7:45 it sounds like, right?
Here again,
Ballpark.
We have a safety meeting at 7:30. It usually takes about 15 minutes. I just sat down in my office, and it was right in there somewhere that he showed up.
Okay. And was your conversation there in the office?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And were you you said you were extremely busy. You were doing other things while he was talking with you, or?
So there was me and another gentleman. The operation manager sat next to me in the same office.
Okay.
And the conversation was going on between the three of us.
Okay.
And I would turn my back on him every now and again to type something else into the computer and sit around in my chair and engage in the conversation.
You were interviewed by law enforcement about this situation, right?
I was.
Would you remember what you spoke to about law enforcement? I can ask you.
And, no, not really, because when law enforcement interviewed me, it was several months afterwards.
Right.
And I told them at that time they were asking me about this conversation,
Right.
and I said, well, you kind of waited a little too long for me to remember any of it. You know, I can only remember so much information, and this didn't seem like it was going to mean anything. I spoke up. Didn't sound like anybody thought it was a big deal one way or the other, and so I forgot about it.
And so the conversation is not something that was like real important to you or that you locked into your memory bank.
That is a true statement.
Okay. And you really had no personal relationship with this guy at all, right?
No, sir.
Okay.
Outside of work.
And it sounds like you were busy trying to get him to move along. And
Yes, sir, I was.
And he just kept talking.
Yes, sir.
Had he ever done that before?
No, sir. That's what I found so strange about the whole conversation was when a couple of days had passed, it just seemed really strange to me.
Did he tell you that he left his son up at the house in Vallecito?
No, well, if he did, I do not remember that.
Did he tell you that it was his son's very first day on their big trip together?
Yes.
He did.
Well, I don't know that I vaguely remember him saying something about picking him up, and the whole conversation was about what they were going to do while he was here.
Okay.
But I don't remember any of it.
Okay.
You know, it was something about sports, but I don't remember whether he'd been playing sports or they were going to go do something, some kind of sporting activity. I just don't remember. It's been too long.
Yeah, I understand that. Now, when you were interviewed by law enforcement, you told them that there was, like, nothing out of the ordinary relating to this conversation, right?
So, yes, there was.
Date and time in the statement, Judge, for 6/13.
That's fine. Yeah, this is September 10th of 2013, Judge. Page 708, 709. On September 10th, you gave this interview and you told them there was nothing out of the ordinary regarding this conversation. Does that sound right?
I guess if I said that, then I'll have to stand by it.
Okay. And you remembered back then about the conversation a lot better than you do now here today, right?
Yes. Okay. But I'm pretty certain at that time I told them that this was odd, that we had this. The only thing I found odd about it was we had a conversation we'd never had before.
It was odd that the conversation had occurred in the way it did.
Yeah.
But that there was nothing about his demeanor that was anything out of the ordinary. It was normal.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that sound right?
Yeah. If that's what I said, then we say.
Okay.
I'll stand by what I said back then versus
what you
would. Yeah.
Today.
Yes.
So this is probably the more reliable statement. There was nothing out of the ordinary, other than the length of the conversation.
Yeah.
No further questions. Thank you.
Any redirect?
No, Judge.
Any questions from the jury? May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Swayze. You're
Yes.
free to go.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll take our, well, we'll let you go home. Let's put it that way. Again, remember your admonitions. Don't discuss this case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. Don't initiate, post, or respond to anything about this case on social media. Do keep an open mind throughout the trial, and you should reach your decision only during final deliberations. Don't let any third person discuss this case in your presence, and if anybody tries to, after you've told them not to, please let me know. Don't talk with any witnesses, the defendant, or lawyers in the case. Don't gather any information on your own. Don't do any outside reading on this case. Don't visit anywhere mentioned in the place. Don't read about it in the paper or look at it on the radio, TV, internet, social media, or the media source. Don't learn about the case outside of the courtroom. We'll start the same time. I think we're making pretty good progress. I'm going to talk to the attorneys after you're on about what the schedule's going to be, and I'll let you know in the morning. Okay? Is everybody rise with jury? All right, please be seated. And unless you guys want this on the record, I don't see the need. I'm just trying to figure out where we're at. So, Mr. Bogan, how much, so we're off. Yeah, we're off. So how much more do you think you have?
I mean, tomorrow will be 3 experts, one guy and Nyquil, and then sprinkling of lay witnesses. think 3 experts and some lay witnesses is going to put us through the close of business tomorrow.
So maybe, depending on how it goes, may go into Wednesday morning?
I can see that happening.
Okay.
With experts, you never know.
Okay, and then with rebuttal, you guys, I mean, I'm not going to hold you to it yet. You haven't heard everything yet, but where are you at? Yeah, I believe so. Okay, Mr. Champagne, what are you thinking?
As far as rebuttal?
Yeah, and that you could add to it as things go by.
Yeah, Judge, I would, one moment, please.
Go ahead.
Jerry, do you have an accurate answer?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. You guys want to talk? That's fine.
That's what I was going to say, Judge. I think on the outside it would be a full day, but probably less. That's our goal.
So hopefully we can get it done on Wednesday or part into Thursday.
I think Thursday noon would be the very safe bet.
Okay. My thought would be as soon as we are done with all the evidence, whether that be at 5 o'clock at night or 8:30 in the morning, we're going to meet about instructions. And then, like I told you before, I'll whatever time that is, we'll give the jury the rest of the day off so that we can work on instructions, and then you guys will have a full day uninterrupted to do closings. And then they'll get a little bit of time to deliberate depending on how long they want to stay. So, okay. Yeah. We can adjust it some. I mean, I guess 8:30 is that's a little extreme. I'm hoping that people have looked at what I sent them and there won't be, I mean, I know what I want to do, but there may be differences after I hear from you. So, but I did send it to you a week ago Saturday, so I'll make sure you guys have looked at it before we close. So
We're actively working on it, Judge.
all right. Thank you very much. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Mm-hmm. You too.